when my boy Josh shoved a stack of mortgage papers worth 600 grand across my kitchen table and said flatly, "Dad, you've got enough saved up. It's time to help us." I swear it felt like I'd raised a stranger. Worse, it felt like betrayal. When I told him no, his wife Sarah blew up, and before I knew it, they dragged me into a lawsuit. They honestly thought I was just some gullible old man with a fat wallet. What they didn't realize was that I've still got fight in me, and I'm not the kind of guy you can back into a corner. You probably won't believe what came next. The morning it all started, I had my coffee halfway to my lips when Josh slid those papers across to me. $600,000. That number hit me like a slap across the face. "Dad, you've saved enough," Josh said, his tone cold, businesslike, almost like I was just another signature on a contract. "It's time to help us out." Meanwhile, Sarah didn't even glance at me. She was glued to her phone, scrolling through pictures of fancy kitchens with granite counters and glossy marble bathrooms. She waved the screen at Josh. "Look at this master suite, babe, 3 walk-in closets." Then she finally turned her eyes on me, flashing a smile so sharp it could have cut glass. "Isn't it just perfect for starting a family?" I set my mug down carefully, making sure not to spill a drop, and asked as evenly as I could, "What exactly are you asking me here?" "Cosign," Josh said, tapping the papers with one finger like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You've got the credit, we get the house. Everybody wins." The nerve of it all hit me like a gut punch. I'd worked my whole life, raised this boy, tried to teach him that money comes from sweat and honest work. And now, here he was, sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd scraped by on a plumber's pay to keep him fed, asking me to gamble away everything I'd saved. "You're 65, Dad. What do you even need all that money for anymore?" Josh muttered, eyes darting away to the papers. Sarah leaned forward then, her voice sugary sweet, but fake as a plastic flower. "Family helps family, Mark. That's what grandparents do. They invest in the future." "Grandparents?" I repeated slowly. "Well, eventually," she waved it off. "Once we're settled into the new place." I thumbed through the mortgage application. Their incomes were right there in black and white. Josh earned a decent living working IT. Sarah, on the other hand, barely scraped together part-time hours at a boutique, spending most of it on clothes and spa days. Together, sure, they could afford a solid starter home. Just not this palace. "You two make 85 grand a year between you," I said, tapping the page. "This mortgage would cost 5,300 a month. What bank even approved this?" Josh's throat bobbed nervously. "Dad, don't get hung up on the details." "Details matter," I shot back, sliding the papers back across the table. "The answer is no." The silence after that was thick enough to choke on. Then Sarah's phone clattered onto the table as she snapped, her voice shrill now. "Excuse me." "No," I repeated, steady as I could. "I won't co-sign for a house you can't afford." Josh's face flushed red. "Are you serious right now? After everything we've done?" "What have you done?" I snapped back before I could stop myself. At that point, I wasn't interested in sparing feelings. Sarah shot to her feet, her chair screeching across the linoleum. "We visit you. We keep you included in our lives. We actually care about having a relationship, unlike some people's kids." "Visiting isn't currency," I said flatly. "Oh, so that's how it is." Her eyes welled up with on-demand tears. "I should have known you'd pick money over your own son's happiness." Josh finally looked me dead in the eye, and what I saw there twisted my chest. Not love, not respect, just raw resentment and entitlement. The kid who once tagged along to fix neighbors' leaky faucets for free was gone. Sitting across from me now was a stranger who saw me as nothing but a walking bank account. "Dad," Josh said quietly, "you owe us this." Those 5 words hit harder than a fist. "I owe you," I said. "After all the sacrifices I've made." "What sacrifices?" Sarah spat, snatching her purse. "Come on, Josh. We're wasting our time." Josh hesitated, looking from her to me, and for half a second I hoped the sun I'd raised might surface. But then he snatched up the papers with shaking hands. "You'll regret this, Dad," he said. Sarah stopped at the door and shot me one last glare, her voice dripping venom. "Don't expect us to keep pretending we want you in our lives when it's clear you don't care about our future." The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. I sat there in the kitchen, staring at the empty spot on the table where those papers had been. My coffee was cold now, a thin film stretched across the top. The whole house felt smaller, hollower. That day, I realized I hadn't lost my son to death or distance, but to greed and entitlement. Slowly, I stood, went to my study, and pulled a small notebook from the drawer. My phone buzzed before I even opened it. Josh's name lit up the screen. I let it ring out. Then it rang again. And again. On the fourth try, I picked up. "What, Josh? What do you want?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "That's all you have to say? Do you even realize what you've done?" In the background, Sarah's hiss carried through the line. "Tell him about the inspection deadline. Tell him we'll lose the house." "Dad," Josh said urgently, "we've got 48 hours to lock financing or we lose the deposit. 27 grand down the drain because you're being selfish." "I'm not being selfish. I'm being realistic." "Realistic?" Josh's laugh was bitter. "You've got 6 figures sitting in retirement accounts you'll never touch. We're talking about our future." The phone shifted hands, and Sarah's voice came through, suddenly soft and fragile, like she thought she could reel me in. "Mark, I'm sorry Josh is so emotional. This is just so hard on us. We've dreamed about this house for months. We've planned everything around it." "Then you should have planned better," I said. Her tone cracked with fake tears. "I don't understand why you hate me so much. I love your son. I just want to give him the life he deserves." "On my dime," I said flatly. "It's not like that," she insisted. "This is an investment in our family's future. Your grandchildren's future." As she spoke, I scribbled the time and date in my notebook, writing down their words as fast as they came. "Grandchildren that don't even exist yet," I muttered. Josh came back on the line. "Dad, listen, we'll pay you back, with interest." "With what money? You can barely make rent as it is." "Our salaries will go up." "Will they? Is that a guarantee?" The silence that followed stretched long. Then Sarah snatched the phone again, her sweetness gone. "You know what, Mark? I'm done being nice." Sarah finally dropped the act. "Josh is too polite to say this, but I'm not. You're a selfish old man, hoarding your money until you die alone. Don't expect us to come running when you need help." Then the line went dead. I wrote her words down word for word, then checked my voicemail. 3 new messages. Each one sounded more frantic and desperate than the last. I transcribed those too, making sure to note the timestamps. Not long after, Josh texted, "Dad, please reconsider. This house means everything to us." 2 minutes later, "I'll do anything. Please." Then Sarah chimed in from her own phone. "Mark, I said things I didn't mean. I was upset. Can we start over? Josh is crying. You're breaking your son's heart." "Fine. Be that way, but don't come crying to us when you realize what you've lost." I took screenshots of every message, then made a new folder on my computer. I labeled it evidence. The phone rang again, but this time it wasn't Josh or Sarah. It was my sister, Susan. "Mark, what's going on?" "Josh just called me sobbing, saying you refused to help them buy a house." "That's right," I said. "Well, why not? They're young. They just need a hand getting started." "Susan, did he tell you it's a $400,000 house?" Silence on the other end. "Then, he said it was their dream home. Did he also mention I'd be co-signing a mortgage that's bigger than their entire yearly income?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Well, no. But Mark, do you really have to be so harsh?" I didn't answer. I just hung up and added her call to my growing log. Within the next hour, the phone rang again. First my brother Dominic, then Mrs. Toretto from down the street, and even Josh's old high school buddy, Sam. Every one of them called with the same story. Josh and Sarah were devastated, heartbroken, couldn't believe I'd be so cruel. I logged each call carefully. The texts never stopped. While I tried to eat dinner, my phone buzzed nonstop. Josh with guilt trips, Sarah with emotional blackmail. "Dad, we looked at cheaper houses, but they're all in bad neighborhoods." "Mark, Josh hasn't eaten all day. He's making himself sick over this." "You're choosing money over your own son. How does that feel?" "We'll never ask for anything else. Just this one favor." Then came the bombshell. "I'm pregnant." That one made me stop cold. I picked up the phone and called Josh right away. "Sarah says she's pregnant." She might be. We haven't seen a doctor yet." "Josh, is she pregnant or not?" "It's complicated, Dad." "No, it's simple. Yes or no." Click. He hung up on me. Half a minute later, a text from Sarah. "False alarm on the pregnancy. Stress makes me late sometimes." I highlighted that message in red when I added it to the file. By 10 that night, I'd racked up 47 text messages and a dozen voicemails. Each one was another round of guilt, anger, or manipulation. They'd spread the story to everyone we knew, painting me as a stingy old man who cared more about his money than his family. But what they didn't realize was that, in the process, they were exposing themselves. Their entitlement, their games, their lies, it was all right there in their own words. And now I had it all documented. I shut off my phone, closed my notebook, and told myself I needed rest. But sleep never came. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my thoughts circling back to the boy Josh used to be. The silence in the house pressed down on me, giving me too much room to remember. I pictured Josh at 10 years old, standing on a milk crate in my workshop, his tongue sticking out in concentration as he learned to use a socket wrench. "Dad, show me again how to tell if it's tight enough," he'd said, those small hands careful as they mimicked mine. I saw him at 18, standing tall in his graduation gown, valedictorian of his high school, full scholarship for computer science. I sat in that auditorium beaming with pride while he gave a speech about hard work and perseverance. He'd even looked right at me and said, "My father taught me that anything worth having is worth working for." Then Josh at 22, calling me after his first job interview. His voice shook with excitement. "Dad, they offered me $55,000 to start. Can you believe it? I'm actually going to make more than you ever did." There hadn't been a hint of arrogance in his tone, just pure joy and disbelief. Back then, he understood what a hard-earned dollar meant. But things started to change after he met Sarah at that work conference in Chicago. She was everything Josh wasn't: loud, flashy, demanding. Within a few months, he was leasing an Audi he couldn't afford, buying high-end clothes, and eating at restaurants that charged more for dinner than I spent on a week's groceries. "Dad, you've got to live a little," he told me when I questioned the spending. "Life's too short to pinch pennies forever." But I knew it wasn't living, it was putting on a show. Sarah had expensive tastes, and Josh was breaking his back trying to keep up. When his paycheck couldn't stretch enough to cover her expectations, the request started. "Dad, I need help with rent this month. Just $600. My car repair wiped out my budget." That was the first one. I gave it without hesitation, remembering how tight money had been when I was young. Then it was car payments. The Audi lease went up. "Can you spot me $900 until I get my bonus?" Then it was credit cards. "Sarah's got some medical bills. Insurance won't cover it. Just $4,000 to get us through." Each time, I helped. Each time, Josh swore it was temporary. Each time, Sarah had another story. I started offering advice instead of cash. "Son, maybe you should think about a cheaper apartment." Josh bristled immediately. "Dad, I don't need a lecture. I need help." "Have you thought about budgeting classes?" I asked once. Sarah actually laughed. "Mark, we're not living in the 1950s. People our age don't sit around counting pennies." But pennies matter. I learned that the hard way, working 60-hour weeks for 3 decades, fixing busted pipes and water heaters, saving every dollar I could. I wanted Josh to know that money wasn't just paper, it was time, my labor, my life. Instead, he grew up thinking money just magically appeared, that because we shared blood, he was entitled to whatever I'd put aside. Looking back, I should have seen the wedding as the turning point. Sarah wanted nothing less than perfection: a designer gown, a pricey venue, and an open bar for 200 guests. When Josh and Sarah started planning their wedding, the bills piled up faster than the invitations. Josh asked me to cover the photographer, then the flowers, and when their credit cards maxed out, the honeymoon too. "Dad, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event," he begged. "We can't cut corners on our wedding." So I paid. $19,000 gone, for one day of celebrating 2 kids who hadn't saved a dime for their own future. I remember standing off to the side, watching Sarah bark orders at the poor photographer like she was some movie star on set. She demanded shot after shot until the man looked like he was about to drop his camera from exhaustion. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Josh and Sarah, calling from Hawaii in a panic. The hotel had unexpected charges. Their rental car had a scratch. They were short on money for their flight home. Another $4,000. "This is the last time, Dad. I promise." But of course it wasn't. The requests kept rolling in, each wrapped in a new excuse. A car repair, a medical bill, some crisis they couldn't possibly have foreseen. Every time, I was told this would be the end of it. And every time, I gave in. I thought I was helping my son. In reality, I was feeding a monster. Josh had learned that Dad would always step up. Dad would always open his wallet. Dad would always put family above common sense. Now here they were, not asking for a loan, not offering repayment, but demanding nearly $500,000, as if it were their right. A gift tied up in the pretty wrapping paper of family obligation. The boy who once learned how to use a wrench in my workshop had grown into a man who treated me like a wrench myself. Just another tool to get what he wanted without earning it. I climbed out of bed with a new kind of determination burning in me. Back in my study, the notebook lay open, full of the day's notes about their harassment campaign. I picked up my pen and started a fresh section, pattern of behavior. Historical context. If they wanted to play hardball, they'd soon find out this old plumber knew how to fight. The first light of dawn was spilling through my study windows as I sat back with a fresh plan. 40 years of fixing pipes had taught me the same lesson over and over. You don't stop a leak by mopping up water. You trace it to the source and shut off the supply. It was time to shut off Josh and Sarah's supply. Permanently. Step 1 was figuring out exactly what I was up against. I called First National Bank, the place Josh had mentioned applying for the loan. Hi, this is Mark Mitchell. My son Josh applied for a home mortgage with you folks. As his possible co-signer, I'd like to understand the terms. The loan officer, Karen Lewis, was polite, professional, and surprisingly candid. Mr. Mitchell, she said, your son and daughter-in-law seem like wonderful people, but this mortgage is, well, aggressive, considering their debt-to-income ratio. What kind of debt are we talking about? I asked. I heard papers rustling on her end. Credit cards mostly. About $49,000 in revolving debt between them. Then car loans, student loans. All told, their monthly obligations already eat up 38% of their gross income. And that's before adding a mortgage. 47 grand in credit card debt. These were the same two people swearing up and down that they were responsible, just needing a little help with this one purchase. I wrote down every detail Karen gave me. Next, I pulled up Josh's social media accounts. Amazing what people will broadcast when they think only their friends are watching. Last month, photos from a Vegas weekend, bottle service, fancy hotel. 3 weeks ago, Sarah on a girls' trip to Miami, posting selfies on a first-class flight and posing in a 5-star suite. 2 weeks ago, Josh showing off a brand new gaming setup, easily $4 grand worth of equipment. Yet according to them, they couldn't afford groceries without my help. I screenshotted everything, piecing together a timeline of their luxury splurges lined up against their cries of poverty. The picture was crystal clear. Two people living far beyond their means, drowning in debt, and trying to drag me under with them. At 10 that morning, I called Grant & Associates, the law firm that had handled my estate planning. Alice Grant, the senior partner, had helped me set up my will and retirement accounts. She knew exactly what I had to lose. Mark, good to hear from you, she said warmly. What's going on? I explained the situation from the ground up, leaving out the emotional parts and sticking to the facts. Alice listened quietly, only cutting in now and then to ask clarifying questions. When I finished, she repeated it back. So, your son and his wife want you to co-sign a mortgage for $600,000, even though they're already overloaded with debt and can't afford the payments on their own. That's right, I said. And when you refused, they began harassing you. Calls, texts, trying to guilt you into agreeing. Exactly, Mark. The most important thing you can do right now is document everything. Every call, every message, every word. If this escalates, that paper trail will be your armor. I flipped through my notebook and told her I'd already started. Yesterday's conversations transcribed, screenshots saved, even a record of the people they'd contacted to pressure me. Excellent, she said. Now, here's what you need to know. Your children have no legal right to your money. Oral promises don't hold weight in court. And if you co-sign this loan, you wouldn't just be a backup. You'd be fully responsible if your son defaulted. She paused. The best thing you can do is get them to admit their true motivations on record. If they frame this as a family obligation, let them say it. If they threaten to cut off contact unless you pay, document it. How do I get that on record? I asked. Minnesota is a one-party consent state, she explained. As long as you're part of the conversation, you can legally record it without telling them. The moment we hung up, I downloaded a recording app to my phone. Sure enough, Josh called right on schedule at noon. Dad, I've been thinking about yesterday, he said, voice softer now. I was upset. Said some things wrong. I tapped record. What things? Well, when I said you owed us, that came out wrong. What I meant was, family helps family. That's all. You don't think I literally meant you owe us, right? I let the silence stretch, then asked, so you don't think I owe you anything? Josh hesitated. Well, Dad, you've got all this money sitting there. We're your only family. Who else would you leave it to? Maybe Charity, I said evenly. I heard him suck in a sharp breath. Charity? You'd give our inheritance to strangers? Your inheritance? I kept my voice calm. Josh, I'm not dead yet. I'm very much alive. That's not what I meant, he stammered. Sarah's voice cut in from the background. Tell him about the house. We need an answer today. Dad, Josh said, his voice tightening, we've got to know by 5. The sellers won't wait forever. Then maybe you should find financing you can actually afford, I said, and hung up. Morgan Cooper and Associates, attorneys at law. That's what the envelope said. My hands looked steady when I signed for it, but inside my chest my heart was pounding as I carried it back to the kitchen table. I set the envelope down without opening it, staring at it like it might bite me, and pulled up my laptop to see who exactly I was dealing with. Turns out Morgan Cooper and Associates weren't just any lawyers. Their whole practice was built around elder financial rights and messy family money disputes. Their website was full of glowing reviews from grown kids bragging about how they'd successfully sued their aging parents for promised support. My stomach turned cold. Josh and Sarah hadn't picked this firm out of the blue. They'd gone shopping for the exact kind of lawyers who'd know how to squeeze me. When I finally tore the envelope open, I did it slowly, carefully, like the letter might explode. The language inside was dressed up to sound polite, but the message was nothing but a threat. Demand for meeting regarding financial obligations and family support commitments. According to them, I needed to show up at their office to settle things amicably before they dragged me into formal proceedings. I pushed the letter aside and went straight back to my laptop. If they wanted to fight, I had to know what battlefield I was standing on. First stop, Josh's social media. People always forget how much of their lives they broadcast when they think only their buddies are watching. I started scrolling, screenshotting everything. There it was, Josh showing off a brand new gaming rig back in February, easily $4,000. Then Sarah's spa weekend in March, with pictures from first-class flights and a luxury resort. Valentine's Day dinner at the priciest place in Minneapolis, complete with champagne and $150 steaks. But just 3 weeks ago, Josh was online whining about barely making ends meet and hoping family will help us get ahead. Next, I called their apartment complex. I put on my best polite dad voice. Hi, this is Mark Mitchell. My son Josh rents unit 247, and I'm thinking of helping him with rent. Can you tell me about his payment history? The manager, probably assuming I was about to swoop in and play hero, didn't hesitate. Mr. Mitchell has been late on rent 4 times this year. Right now, he's 2 months behind, but we're working with them. 2 months behind on rent, but somehow they could afford a Vegas getaway just last month. Their priorities couldn't have been clearer if they'd written them in neon. I dug deeper. Public records showed Josh was locked into a $935 a month lease on an Audi he had no business driving. Sarah's credit card spending, stupidly visible through a shared finance app they hadn't even bothered to make private, showed luxury shopping, fancy restaurants, and pricey gym memberships. Between the two of them, they made about $73,000 a year, but their spending topped $85,000. They were floating on credit and waiting for me to bail them out when it all came crashing down. But the biggest shock didn't come from the records. It came from a phone call. Josh's old college buddy, Dominic, reached out to me directly. Mr. Mitchell, this is Dominic Toretto. I don't want to get in the middle of family stuff, but Josh asked me for money last month. Said his dad was being unreasonable about helping with bills. I asked him how much Josh wanted. $4,000, Dominic said. Same story as always. Temporary setback, pay me back soon. But this is the 3rd time in 2 years. I wrote it all down. Josh and Sarah weren't just circling me. They were hitting up anyone they could, spinning the same sob story, playing the same victim card. By the time the sun went down, I had a thick file of proof, screenshots, financial records, witness statements. 6 different people had loaned them money in the past year, all under the same lie of temporary hardship, and none of them had seen a dime back. Credit cards maxed, a lifestyle they couldn't afford, and a steady expectation that someone else would pick up the tab. I called Alice Morris, my attorney friend, and laid it all out. Her response was blunt. Mark, this isn't just family pressure anymore. They're getting ready to sue you. For what? I asked. I never promised them anything. They'll say you made verbal commitments to help with big purchases. Under Minnesota law, oral agreements can sometimes stick if they can prove it. But I didn't make any promises, I insisted. I believe you, she said. But they'll try to find witnesses, spin stories, make it sound like you gave them implied assurances. They might even claim you're slipping mentally, that you're confused about what you said. That's when it hit me. Their whole strategy was to tear down my credibility. They wanted to paint me as some forgetful old man who had gone back on his word. And they had hired experts in elder financial disputes, the kind of lawyers who knew exactly how to push that angle. What should I do? I asked. Document everything, she said. Record every conversation, legally. Collect witnesses who can vouch for what you actually said. And Mark, start thinking of this as a war. They're not aiming for reconciliation anymore. I hung up and looked at the growing pile of evidence on my desk. Dozens of screenshots, call recordings, financial records, and statements from people Josh and Sarah had tried to con. They thought they could corner me into a lawsuit. What they didn't realize was that I'd spent 40 years solving problems with patience and precision. They had no idea what they had started. Then my phone rang. Josh's name flashed on the screen. I hit record before I answered. Hello, son. Dad, we need to talk. Can you come to the law office tomorrow at 2? We can work this out. What exactly is there to work out? I asked. The money you owe us. The promises you made about helping family. What promises, Josh? Don't play games, Dad. You know what you said. No, I don't. Tell me exactly what I promised and when. There was silence on the line. Then I heard Sarah's voice in the background. He's trying to trick you. Don't answer that. Josh's voice came back, less confident now. Just come to the meeting, Dad. 2 o'clock tomorrow. I'll be there. I hung up, saved the recording, and dropped it into my evidence folder. Josh couldn't name a single promise because no promises had ever been made. The very next morning, another certified letter arrived. This one felt heavier, and I knew why. Sitting at the same kitchen table where Josh had first tried to strong-arm me weeks earlier, I opened it carefully. Complaint for damages. Josh Mitchell and Sarah Mitchell versus Mark Mitchell. They were demanding $500,000 plus legal costs and attorney fees. My hands didn't shake as I read, but my anger grew with every line. They accused me of making repeated verbal promises to help with major purchases. They said I'd created reasonable expectations of financial support, and that my sudden refusal had caused them financial harm and emotional distress. But the kicker was at the end, the most outrageous claim of all. They weren't just suing me for money. They were accusing me of losing my mind. The complaint flat out alleged I was showing signs of age-related cognitive decline, that I'd supposedly forgotten the promises I'd made to them, and that the court needed to step in to protect all parties. It was insulting, infuriating, and dangerous all at once. I set the papers down, picked up the phone, and called Alice Grant right away. They filed suit. $600,000, I told her. I was afraid of that, she said. Mark, can you come in this morning? We need to go over strategy. An hour later, I was in her office, the lawsuit spread across her big conference table. Alice flipped through the pages with sharp eyes. This is aggressive. They're pulling every tactic they can, breach of oral contract, promissory estoppel, even hinting at elder abuse. Elder abuse. I snapped. They're the ones robbing me blind, trying to drain my retirement. She gave me a look that was both sympathetic and pragmatic. That's the irony. But Mark, you need to understand. They've chosen this path very carefully. They'll say you made promises in front of other people. They'll argue you encouraged them to house hunt. And when you backed out, they'll point to it as proof you're confused or forgetful. Witnesses? I asked. What witnesses? I never promised them anything. Alice grabbed a yellow legal pad and started making a list. Let's go step by step. Did you ever say something, anything, that they could twist into sounding like a financial commitment? I sat back and thought hard. I said once that family should help each other. But I meant emotional support, advice, being there for each other, not writing blank checks. And were other people around when you said it? At Josh's birthday dinner last year, I gave a toast about families sticking together. At Christmas, I said I wanted them to be happy and successful. She set her pen down and sighed. That's exactly the kind of vague statement they'll twist into evidence. They'll try to make it sound like you were promising to bankroll their future. That's when it clicked. Josh and Sarah hadn't just woken up one morning and decided to sue me. They'd been laying groundwork for months, maybe years. Every family event, every casual word, every toast or offhand remark about wanting the best for them had been quietly stored away as ammunition. I leaned forward. Alice, they've borrowed money from half a dozen people, always spinning sob stories. They're 2 months behind on rent, but they just went to Vegas. Their social media shows them living large while they tell everyone they're broke. Her eyes sharpened. Then that's our defense. We show their pattern of manipulation, the lies, the spending habits. Your documentation becomes key to proving they're dishonest. For the next 2 hours, we hammered out our plan. Counterclaims for defamation, harassment, abuse of process. Discovery requests for everything. Financial records, social media posts, emails, texts, even messages to the friends they'd borrowed from. Alice didn't sugarcoat it. Mark, this will be expensive and messy. They're banking on you folding under the pressure, settling quietly, so it all goes away. I thought back to the Josh I once knew, the boy who used to help me in the workshop, proud of a job well done. Then I pictured the man he'd become, entitled, demanding, trying to strip me of everything I'd built. I'm not settling, I said firmly. I want people to see the truth. I want everyone to know what they've done. Alice nodded. Then we fight. Full discovery. Character witnesses. Financial analysis. We'll expose the lies and prove you never promised them a cent. I signed the paperwork to respond formally and file our counterclaims. The legal bills would be steep, no doubt about it, but my dignity was worth more than money. Alice, I said as I slid the signed papers back to her, I want every piece of this public. I want the court records to show the lies, the irresponsibility, the manipulation. Their friends, their neighbors, this whole town should see exactly who they are. Then that's what we'll do, she assured me. Everything goes into the public record. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt real clarity. They thought they could bully me, frighten me into silence. But what they'd actually done was declare war on a man who'd spent his life solving problems carefully, thoroughly, and without backing down. The gloves were off. Leaving Alice's office, I drove straight to Witwicky's diner, the same diner where I'd had my morning coffee for 20 years. I figured it was time to face the community with my head held high and the facts in my hands. Sarah, the waitress, hesitated when she saw me. She'd been cool toward me lately, polite but distant. Clearly Josh and Sarah had gotten to her with their sob story. "Coffee, Mark?" she asked. "Please," I said. "And Sarah, can I show you something?" I slid across a small folder of printouts. Josh's gaming setup, the Vegas vacation, the champagne dinners, all neatly dated and lined up with his public posts about struggling to pay rent. Sarah's eyebrows rose as she flipped through them. Wait a second, he was posting about being broke the same week he was in Vegas? That's right. And here, I pointed to the manager's letter, is the statement about him being 2 months behind on rent at the time. Her face hardened. "Mark, I owe you an apology. Sarah came in here crying about how you wouldn't help your own family. I believed her. But this," she tapped the photos, "this is different." News travels fast in a small town. By that afternoon, I'd shown the same evidence to Sam Witwicky over at the hardware store, to Father McKenna at St. Mary's, and to Helen, our town librarian. Each time I kept my voice calm, factual. "I don't gossip," I told them, "but I think you should know the truth. The thing about the truth is, it holds steady under pressure." Josh and Sarah's tale tugged on emotions, but once people saw the evidence, their sympathy collapsed. By evening, Mrs. Chin stopped me at the mailbox. "Mark, I've been thinking. Josh drives a nicer car than my husband, and we're both still working. How exactly are they struggling?" "Good question, Dorothy," I said. "Maybe next time Sarah posts about their poverty on Facebook, you should ask her that directly." And that's exactly what people started doing. The social media backfire was brutal. At first, Sarah's emotional posts about family betrayal had drawn sympathy. But then the comments started rolling in. "Weren't you just in Miami last month? That Audi doesn't look like poverty. Mark Mitchell has always been generous to this town. Something doesn't add up." Sarah tried doubling down, posting wilder and wilder accusations about elderly selfishness and broken promises. But the more dramatic she got, the more people saw the performance for what it was: manipulation. The grocery store gave me the most satisfying kind of validation. Susan, the cashier who'd been cold to me for weeks, leaned over during checkout and spoke in a hushed voice. "Mr. Mitchell, I feel awful about how I treated you. But after seeing those Facebook posts lined up next to Josh's vacation pictures, well, I have eyes. I get it now. No harm done. Susan," I told her. "You weren't given the full story. People only saw what Josh and Sarah wanted them to see." She sighed. "My daughter even pointed out that Josh's gaming computer costs more than I make in 2 months, yet he's on social media claiming he can't afford groceries. It just doesn't add up." That's when I realized the isolation Josh and Sarah had tried to trap me in was crumbling fast. Folks who had once rallied to their side were now stepping back, questioning the holes in their story. At the gas station, I ran into Josh's old boss. He shook his head and said, "Mark, your son came by last week asking for money. Said you were being unreasonable about a small loan. But now I've read those lawsuit papers. $600,000 isn't exactly small." "No, it isn't," I agreed. He frowned. "Makes a man wonder what else he wasn't exactly truthful about." That was the beauty of my approach. I never stooped to name-calling. Never branded Josh or Sarah liars, cheats, or thieves. I didn't need to. I simply showed people documented facts and let them connect the dots themselves. Evidence has a way of speaking louder than emotion. By the end of the week, the tide had turned completely. Folks who'd pitted the struggling young couple were now giving them side-eye, wondering what else they'd lied about. Josh and Sarah's support network wasn't just weakening, it was collapsing from within. Then, at 8 p.m. one evening, my phone buzzed. Josh's name lit up the screen. I answered, and his voice sounded nothing like the cocky son who had once demanded my savings. It was shaky, almost frightened. "Dad, can we meet? Somewhere private? Just the two of us?" The confidence was gone. The entitlement had been stripped away. "Where did you have in mind?" I asked. "Maybe coffee corner tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I think we need to work something out." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. The lawsuit was filed. The community had seen the evidence. Their house of lies was crumbling, and Josh knew it. "I'll be there, son." But the next morning at coffee corner, Josh was nowhere to be found. Instead, a message came through. He'd chosen Riverside Park instead. The very same park where I'd once taught him to ride a bike. When I arrived, I saw him hunched on a bench, looking older than his 35 years. His expensive clothes still tried to shout success, but the stress around his eyes told a truer story. His hands shook when he stood. "Dad," he said quickly, "thanks for coming." We sat down, one at each end of the same bench where I'd once pushed him on the swings. The irony didn't escape me. "You look tired, Josh," I said. He gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "Yeah, well, things have been complicated." He fidgeted, staring down at his shoes. "Dad, I think this whole thing has gotten out of hand." I stayed silent, letting him speak. "The lawsuit, the lawyers, all the drama. Maybe we can work something out. You know, just between us." "What kind of work out?" I asked. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "If we drop the lawsuit, maybe you could help us with something smaller. Not the whole house. Just a down payment. 20, 30,000. The tactic was obvious. Start high, get rejected, come back with a compromise that was still outrageous, but try to make it sound reasonable by comparison. "Where's Sarah?" I asked. His face tightened. She didn't want me to meet you. Said it made me look weak." "And what do you think?" He looked down again. "I think I'm drowning, Dad." His voice cracked. "Our credit cards are maxed. The car payment's 3 months behind. The legal fees are killing us." I pulled out my phone and pressed record. "Tell me about your financial situation, Josh." He froze. "Why are you... Wait, are you recording this?" "Yes. For my protection." He stared at the phone, then sagged like the fight had gone out of him. And then the confessions poured out. "We owe 47 grand on credit cards. The Audi lease is actually $1,200 a month. I lied when I told you less. Sarah's spending, it's out of control, but I can't stop her. The Vegas trip? $8,000 we didn't have. She drained our savings twice last year. We've borrowed money from at least 6 people, always with fake stories about temporary hardship." He rubbed his face with both hands. "We never thought you'd fight the lawsuit. Our lawyers said most elderly parents just settle instead of going through the stress of court." "Your lawyer was wrong," I said flatly. "Dad, the discovery process, They're demanding all our financial records, social media accounts, everything. Once people see what we actually spend compared to what we've claimed." His voice trailed off as he buried his face in his hands. "We're going to be exposed completely." Sitting there, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not even sadness anymore. Just a cold, steady detachment. The boy who'd once handed me wrenches while I fixed pipes was sitting here admitting to fraud and manipulation on a scale I hadn't wanted to believe. "Josh, did you ever really think I promised to buy you a house?" I asked quietly. A long silence followed. Finally, he whispered, "Sarah said you did. She told me when you talked about family helping family, you were committing to us financially. And what do you think now?" He lifted his head, eyes red. "I think I've been a fool. I think I let her convince me to throw away my relationship with my own father for money we never deserved." A month earlier, those words might have broken me. They might have stirred pity. But now they sounded hollow. Another attempt to soften me up, another manipulation tactic. "What do you want from me, Josh?" "I want to take it all back. The lawsuit, the things we said about you, the whole mess. Can't we just forget this ever happened?" I stood, looking down at him. "No, Josh. We can't. You dragged me into court. You accused me of elder abuse, of cognitive decline, of breaking promises I never made. You tried to steal my retirement through fraud." His face crumpled. "I was desperate." "So was I said quietly. "Desperate to understand how I raised a son who could do this to his own father." I walked away, leaving Josh on that park bench, the same one where I'd once taught him to be honest, work hard, and treat people with respect. Lessons he'd apparently forgotten. Driving home, I felt emptier than victorious. The scared young man in the park barely resembled the confident boy I'd raised. But it wasn't my job to rescue him from the consequences he'd earned. Pulling into my driveway, I noticed a familiar car across the street. Sarah was behind the wheel, staring at my house like a predator sizing up its prey. Our eyes met through her windshield, and the pure hatred in her gaze made my stomach turn. I went inside and called Alice Grant immediately to report the surveillance. 2 days later, a court notice arrived. The hearing was set for Thursday morning. Judge Patricia Henley would preside. Monday was spent putting my evidence files in order one final time. Every screenshot, every recorded conversation, every financial record was meticulously labeled and indexed. Alice kept shaking her head in admiration. "Mark, in 30 years of practice, I've never seen a plaintiff with documentation this thorough. They've walked right into a trap of their own making." Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, matching the weight of what lay ahead. I wore my best suit, the one from Josh's college graduation, and got to the courthouse 30 minutes early. Josh and Sarah were already there, huddled with their attorney near the metal detectors. Sarah wore a black dress that probably cost more than some people earned in a week. Josh's suit was crisp and tailored. They were still playing the part of successful young professionals, even as their financial world crumbled around them. Their lawyer, James Morgan, looked every bit the part of a slick, 40-something courtroom shark. Perfectly styled hair, expensive briefcase, reputation built on scaring elderly parents into settling family disputes. He was about to learn that not all elderly parents could be bullied. "Mr. Mitchell," Judge Henley called, and the courtroom snapped to attention. She was a stern woman in her 50s, known for having zero tolerance for frivolous lawsuits. Morgan stood, smooth and practiced, trying to sell sympathy for his young clients. "Your Honor, my clients have documented evidence of repeated verbal commitments from the defendant to assist with major family purchases. Mr. Josh Mitchell will testify that his father explicitly promised to help with their first home, creating reasonable expectations of support." Josh took the stand, his voice shaking as he recounted conversations that had never happened. According to his testimony, "I'd made promises at family dinners, birthdays, and holiday gatherings to ensure they got their dream house." Pure fiction. I watched the judge's expression grow skeptical as Josh stumbled through his rehearsed lies. Then Sarah went. Her performance was worse. Sobbing, trembling, she painted herself as the victim of elderly betrayal, claiming I'd encouraged them to look at expensive houses because I was supposedly committed to paying for them. "Mr. Mitchell told us repeatedly that family takes care of family," she said through fake tears. "He said our happiness was his priority, that he had more money than he could ever spend." Judge Henley remained neutral, but I noticed her taking careful notes during the most theatrical portions of her testimony. Then it was Alice's turn. "Your Honor, The defendants have prepared a comprehensive response to these allegations, supported by extensive documentation. I took the stand and calmly laid out the truth. No theatrics, no grand gestures, just facts, dates, and recordings. Alice guided the presentation. Josh's social media posts showing luxury, spending while claiming poverty, credit card statements exposing their real financial situation, recorded phone calls where they admitted their manipulative schemes. The courtroom fell silent as my recording of Josh played. We never thought you'd fight the lawsuit. Our lawyer said most elderly people settle rather than face the stress of court. Morgan objected repeatedly, but the recordings were admissible and devastating. The financial timeline was damning. While claiming they couldn't afford groceries, Josh and Sarah had spent $43,000 on luxury purchases in the past year. Judge Henley reviewed the evidence, incredulity growing on her face. When Alice finished, the judge leaned forward and asked the question that ended it all. Mr. Morgan, where is the written documentation of this alleged promise? Any contract? Any agreement? Any proof that your clients were guaranteed $500,000? Morgan faltered. Your Honor, many family agreements are verbal. I'm not asking about family agreements. The judge interrupted. I'm asking for written proof of a specific promise to provide $500,000 for a house. Silence. There was none. Judge Henley's expression hardened. So you are asking this court to order an elderly man to pay $500,000 based solely on the testimony of two people who, according to evidence, have systematically lied about their finances, manipulated family members, and attempted to defraud their own father. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Josh and Sarah looked like deer caught in headlights. Your Honor, I request a brief recess to consult with my clients, Morgan stammered. Granted. 15 minutes. As the judge left the bench, Alice leaned over, whispering, We've won, Mark. Completely. I didn't celebrate. I was watching Josh crumble, finally confronted with reality. Judge Henley returned, her voice carrying the weight of final judgment. I've reviewed all the evidence presented. This court finds the plaintiff's claims not only without merit, but actively fraudulent. Josh's face went pale. Sarah gripped the table so tightly her knuckles showed white through her skin. The evidence I presented left no doubt. It showed a clear pattern of financial manipulation, deliberate lies, and outright attempted fraud. The plaintiffs had no credible proof, neither written nor verbal, that I had ever promised $500,000 for a home. The judge's voice grew sharper. Furthermore, the evidence shows the plaintiffs maintained lavish lifestyles while claiming poverty, borrowed money from multiple sources under false pretenses, and systematically tried to manipulate elderly family members for financial gain. I sat perfectly still, a deep satisfaction settling in my chest. Justice was unfolding exactly as it should. The plaintiff's lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. The defendant's counterclaims for defamation, harassment, and abuse of process are granted in full. Morgan tried to speak. Your Honor, if we could. Judge Henley's tone cut him off like steel. The court awards the defendant full reimbursement of legal fees in the amount of $28,300, plus court costs, and punitive damages of $15,000 for the emotional distress caused by this frivolous action. Josh made a choking sound. $43,000 they didn't have, on top of their existing legal fees. The judge continued, This court is referring this case to the state attorney's office for potential perjury charges. Lying under oath is a felony, and this court does not tolerate fraud. Sarah finally broke down in real tears. Real this time, not the manufactured display from earlier. Josh sat frozen, staring straight ahead, as if watching his life crumble in real time. Finally, the court issued a restraining order. Josh and Sarah were prohibited from contacting me directly or indirectly, from coming near my home, and from making any public statements about this case. Judge Henley fixed her gaze on them. You attempted to use this court to steal from a family member. You have disgraced yourselves, wasted taxpayer resources, and committed perjury in my courtroom. I hope the consequences teach you the difference between legal action and legalized theft. The gavel came down with finality. Outside the courtroom, reporters were gathered. Word of the case had spread fast through the community. Josh and Sarah hurried past with their heads down, but I was greeted by familiar faces waiting to speak. Mr. Mitchell, how do you feel about the verdict? Asked Jenny from the local paper. I thought a moment. I feel justice was served today. Family relationships should be built on love and respect, not financial manipulation. I hope this sends a clear message. Elderly people won't be intimidated by threats or lawsuits from people who want something for nothing. Mrs. Toretto from down the street approached, tears in her eyes. Mark, I'm so sorry. I should have known better. I believe their lies. No harm done. Helen, I said. People were given incomplete information. Josh appeared suddenly beside me, desperation written across his face. Dad, please can we talk? I know I made mistakes. I looked at this stranger wearing Josh's face and felt only tired sadness. You heard the judge, Josh. There's a restraining order. Don't violate it. I walked past him without another word, Alice at my side, and stepped into the bright sunshine outside the courthouse. Behind me, I could hear Sarah's voice rising in fury. This isn't over. We'll appeal. Morgan's sharp response cut her off. You'll do nothing. You're lucky you're not being arrested right now. I drove home slowly, taking the long route past the house Josh and Sarah could no longer afford. A bright red for sale sign had appeared in the yard, probably posted that morning after the hearing. I didn't slow down, but I allowed myself a small smile. Justice served. Pulling into my driveway, I felt it like never before. My home, my sanctuary, the place they had tried to steal through legal fraud, felt warm and welcoming again. The afternoon sun made the windows glow gold, peaceful in a way it hadn't been for months. My phone buzzed constantly with messages of congratulations. The courthouse victory had spread faster than a lottery win in town. Sarah from the diner. Mark, so proud of how you handled this. Takes real courage to stand up for what's right. Sam Witwicky, coffee's on the house for life. You showed this town what integrity looks like. Father McKenna, justice served with dignity. Your parents would be proud. By evening, I'd received over 40 messages from friends, neighbors, and even strangers. The community that Josh and Sarah had briefly turned against me was now firmly in my corner, angry at having been manipulated. Mrs. Chin even stopped by with a casserole. Mark, I felt so foolish for believing their story. Watching you handle this with such class, you're an inspiration. The long-term consequences for Josh and Sarah became clear quickly. Within days, their house went into foreclosure, the collapse of their financial empire unavoidable in the wake of the court judgment. The Audi was repossessed. Their social media accounts vanished entirely, probably to escape the barrage of comments from people who now knew the truth. Through mutual friends, I learned they'd moved in with Sarah's parents in North Dakota, completely humiliated and financially ruined. Josh had lost his job. His employer didn't appreciate the negative publicity from the perjury investigation. The court-ordered damages, legal fees, and their destroyed credit meant it would take years for them to recover from this disaster. They had gambled everything on trying to intimidate an old man, and they lost spectacularly. Did I feel guilty for Josh's consequences? Not for a second. Every misfortune that fell on them came from choices they made themselves. I hadn't ruined their finances. I simply refused to bail them out of their own irresponsibility. The broader lessons settled into my mind like sediment after a storm. Truth really does triumph over manipulation, but only if you're willing to stand up and fight for it. Dignity and principle are worth defending, even when the cost feels high. Family loyalty must be earned through respect, not demanded through guilt or threats. Most importantly, saying no to family members who try to exploit you isn't cruelty. It's necessary boundary setting that protects everyone. Life moved forward with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The constant stress of wondering when Josh would make his next financial demand was gone. The respect I'd earned from the community was deeper than anything I'd known before. New friendships formed with people who had watched me handle the ordeal with integrity. My church even asked me to speak to the senior group about protecting themselves from financial manipulation. The local newspaper wrote an editorial about my case, calling it a textbook example of how truth and patience overcome lies and greed. 3 months after the court victory, I was planting tomato seedlings in my garden when Alice Grant called with news. Mark, Josh and Sarah's lawyer has been sanctioned by the state bar for knowingly filing a frivolous lawsuit, and the district attorney is pursuing perjury charges against them. I kept planting, feeling the rich, dark soil under my hands, perfect for growing healthy things while removing harmful weeds. What's the likely outcome? I asked. Probation, community service, permanent criminal records. Nothing that will put them in jail, but enough to make sure everyone knows what they tried to do. After hanging up, I sat back on my heels, surveying the neat rows of plants that would feed me through summer and into fall. The garden was a perfect metaphor for life. Nurture what's healthy, remove what's harmful, and trust that good things will grow from patient effort. Josh had been like a weed, choking out peace and draining resources meant for healthy growth. Removing him had been painful, but necessary. My phone rang with another friend checking in, inviting me to dinner, or just sharing a few kind words. The community that had briefly shunned me now embraced me more warmly than ever. I was finally free to be the man I'd always been. Honest, hardworking, generous to people who deserved it, and absolutely unwilling to reward greed or manipulation. The sun set over my garden, painting everything in golden light. Tomorrow, I'd plant the next row of vegetables, tend the flowers, and continue building the peaceful life I'd earned through a lifetime of honest work. Justice served, family protected, truth victorious. Sometimes, the hardest battles are fought with the people closest to you. But sometimes, those battles are exactly what's needed to protect everything that matters. I was at peace. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left.